Duru had always lived his life with caution, not because he was naturally fearful, but because he had grown up under the heavy voice of a mother who never stopped reminding him that food could be both life and death, depending on where you put your mouth. His mother, Maduru, was a trader in the old Onitsha market, and she had witnessed too many stories of people who ate carelessly and ended up in early graves. So she made it her duty to drill it into her son's ears that he should never put hunger above wisdom. She used to say, "Duru, if you are hungry and the only thing you see is a dirty plate of food, just drink water and sleep. At least sleep will not kill you, but bad food will." For years, Duru obeyed this advice. He had no choice. When he was in secondary school, he lived with her, and she controlled everything he ate. Later, at the university, she packed enough foodstuff for him so that he would not be running up and down canteens. But life had changed. Duru now worked in a bank in Lagos, and Lagos had its own way of pushing people beyond their boundaries. Every day, he left his small apartment in Surulere as early as 5 a.m. because the traffic on Western Avenue did not respect anyone's time. He squeezed into overcrowded buses, tried to avoid the conductors who always shouted into passengers' ears. By the time he reached the bank branch at Marina, sweat had soaked his shirt, and his head throbbed from the stress of the journey. His work in the customer service unit was far from easy. From morning till evening, he faced endless complaint about failed transfers, missing alerts, and swallowed ATM cards. And because he had a naturally gentle face, angry customers often poured all their frustration on him. On this particular Thursday, Duru did not have time for breakfast because he woke up late. By noon, his stomach was beating drums inside him. He thought of sneaking to a fast food place, but his salary was already stretched thin, and the month was still dragging like a goat tied to a stick. He dismissed the idea. By evening, after balancing ledgers and closing accounts, he staggered out of the bank and into the noisy streets where hawkers shoved gala and lacasera into people's hands. His stomach rolled, and he could no longer pretend. That was when he saw the small restaurant by the junction, the kind of place Lagos people call Mama Put. The place was crowded. Smoke from firewood drifted lazily into the sky, while women in aprons shouted orders and clanked plates. The prices were boldly written on a dirty board. Rice, 500 Nigerian nairas. Beans, 400 Nigerian nairas. Meat, 200 Nigerian nairas. It was far cheaper than any fast food joint. Duru told himself, "Let me just manage today. Tomorrow I'll cook at home." He joined the queue, waiting impatiently as the smell of palm oil and pepper assaulted him. Soon, a sweating woman with a wrapper tied across her chest pushed a plate of steaming rice and stew into his hands. Duru sat on a wooden bench, dizzy with hunger, and began to devour the food quickly. The rice was soft enough, but the stew carried a sourness he noticed immediately. The tomato tasted watery, like something already going bad, and the vegetables looked limp as though they had been boiled and reheated too many times. He paused, and his mother's voice echoed in his head, warning him about cheap street food. But hunger pressed him forward. He told himself, maybe that's just the style of cooking in this place. Before he knew it, the plate was empty. He washed it down with a sachet of pure water. At first, everything seemed normal. He went home, had his bath, and prepared for the next day. But around 10 p.m., as he lay on his bed, his stomach twisted as if someone had grabbed his intestines with iron hands. He jumped up sweating, thinking it was ordinary running stomach. But within minutes, the pain became unbearable. He rolled on the floor, clutched his belly, and shouted for help until his neighbor, a young man named Abuka, rushed in and called a cab to carry him to the nearest hospital. By the time they arrived, Duru's face was pale. The doctors shook their heads as they examined him. They whispered among themselves before telling Abuka that Duru's intestines had twisted, and if they didn't take him into surgery immediately, he might not survive the night. When Duru opened his eyes the next morning, the white ceiling above him blurred into view. For a moment, he could not remember where he was, until the sharp smell of antiseptic and the weight of pain in his stomach reminded him he was in a hospital bed. His lips were dry, and when he tried to speak, only a weak groan escaped. A nurse in a blue gown leaned over and said, "You are lucky, sir. Very lucky." The surgery was successful, but you need to rest. But rest did not come easily. Every time Duru closed his eyes, he remembered the way his stomach twisted like a rope being wrung, and he shivered at how close he had come to death. Ibuka came in later, shaking his head. Duru, not God save you, oh? Dr. Talk saith him delay you another 1 hour, he for be super story. That afternoon, the doctor returned and explained, Young man, your intestines twisted because of infection. The food you ate was not just bad, it was contaminated and poisonous. This is more than ordinary food poisoning. Please, from now on, be careful what you eat. Then he left. But his words kept echoing in Duru's mind like the toll of a bell. How could one plate of food turn into this? He had eaten in restaurants before, although rarely, but never imagined that hunger could almost cost him his life. But never had he faced something this dangerous. As the days passed and his body slowly began to heal, Duru's mind refused to rest. On his third day in the ward, he overheard 2 men talking near the window. One of them was describing how he had collapsed after eating umla and yudu at a roadside restaurant in Yaba, and how the doctor said it was severe food contamination. The other man laughed bitterly and added that his own brother nearly died after eating beans in Mushin. Duru turned his face to the wall, but his ears remained wide open. Was this just coincidence, or was something deeper happening across the city? At night, when the ward was silent except for the groans of patients, Duru's thoughts troubled him more than his stitches. He remembered the sour taste of stew, the limp vegetables floating in oil, the watery tomatoes that seemed lifeless, already spoiled. He remembered the sharp laughter of the woman who had served him, her sweaty face, the careless way she barked orders without even looking at the food she was scooping. It was obvious now. Hunger had blinded him that evening, and he was paying for it with pain. On the 4th day, his mother visited. She stood by his bed, tears in her eyes, shaking her head in disappointment. Duru, how many times did I tell you? You cannot eat just any food. Cheap food is death in disguise. See your life now. If not for God, I would have been burying you today instead of visiting you. Duru bowed his head like a child being scolded by his teacher. He wanted to defend himself, to explain the stress and the hunger, but the words refused to leave his mouth. Deep inside, he knew she was right. Still, something inside him was restless. It was not enough to simply say, "Be careful." He wanted to know what exactly had entered his body, what kind of poison had twisted his intestine almost to death. He wanted to trace that plate of rice and stew back to its roots. So, as he sat on the hospital bed, sipping pap and waiting for his stitches to heal, he made a decision. He would find out the truth by himself. He would go back to that restaurant. Not as a hungry man this time, but as someone searching for answers. A week after surgery, when his stitches no longer burned and his steps were steady enough to walk without clutching his side, Duru signed his discharge papers and returned home. His neighbors welcomed him warmly. Some warned him not to scare them like that again. Ibuka even joked, "Oh boy, we for Dawn Day contribute burial money, if not for God, oh." Everyone laughed, but Duru's mind was elsewhere. The following Saturday, instead of resting as his mother advised, Duru dressed in plain clothes, left his phone on silent, and quietly returned to the same junction where the restaurant stood. Hawkers shouted, "Gala, bottled water, cashew nuts." But Duru's eyes were fixed on the shack. Smoke still rose lazily from its back, and the wooden benches were filled with customers rushing through their evening plates as if their lives depended on it. He entered slowly, pretending to be just another tired man seeking cheap food. The same woman, with a wrapper tied tightly around her waist and a sweaty scarf on her head, was barking orders and scooping rice without looking up. "Customer, when you go chop?" she asked absent-mindedly. Duru forced a smile and ordered beans with stew, though he knew he would never put into his mouth. The same unsettling smell hit his nose, fermented, sour, wrong. He poked at the food with a spoon, pretending to eat, while his eyes kept drifting toward the smoky backyard behind the zinc wall. After a few minutes, he excused himself, pretending to look for a place to wash his hands, and quietly slipped to the back. What he saw nearly froze his legs to the ground. Open basins of tomatoes sat rotting, their skins peeling, slimy with decay. A young boy in a dirty polo rinsing with water from a yellow jerrycan that smelled like gutter. Nearby, another worker stirred a blackened pot filled with leftover stew from the previous day. When a fly fell inside, he casually scooped it out with a spoon and continued stirring as if nothing had happened. Duru's stomach twisted, not from pain this time, but from disgust. He quickly pulled out his phone and snapped some pictures, pretending to cough to cover the click. His heartbeat quickened. If anyone caught him, he didn't know what excuse he could give. Just as he turned to leave, he overheard two of the younger workers arguing. One of the boys muttered, "Madam no day buy correct tomato again. She day always buy the cheap ones. Even when he don spoil, she go still say make we use 'em like that. Customers no go no." The other boy laughed. "No be only that one oh. She day even buy vegetables way don day turn yellow from mile 12. If we complain, she go shout say Legos customers no day pay well for fresh food." Duru felt a coldness spread through his chest. His suspicion was true. He had nearly died because someone wanted to save a few naira. He pulled his cap low, quietly slipped out of the backyard, and returned to the front like a man who had finished eating. Dropping the untouched plate of beans, he paid and walked away. That night in his room, he sat on his bed staring at the pictures he had captured. The rotten tomatoes, the dirty water, the blackened stew. His anger boiled like hot oil. He remembered the boy's words, "Customers no go no." The phrase cut him like a knife. It wasn't just food that had almost killed him. It was greed, wickedness, and a deep disrespect for human life. Right there, he swore he would not keep quiet. But before confronting anyone, he knew he needed more proof. By the time a week passed, Duru's anger had matured like firewood drying under the sun. Each time he looked at the pictures on his phone, his stomach twisted with rage. He thought about the hospital bills, the stitches on his belly, the fear in his mother's eyes, and the fact that he had come so close to death, all because one woman decided to gamble with human lives for the sake of money. He knew he couldn't fold his hands and watch her continue poisoning people. Something inside him would not let him rest until he confronted her face to face. On a Wednesday evening, he returned to the restaurant. The place was booming as usual. Men in office shirts were eating hungrily. Bus conductors shouted orders. Women with wrappers rushed in with babies strapped to their backs. Everyone was pushing plates of food into their mouths, as if time itself was chasing them. None of them knew the danger sitting on their plates. Duru stood at the entrance for a long time before taking a deep breath and walking straight to the counter, where Madam herself was scooping rice and barking at customers. "Next customer. Sit down quick. No time." When her eyes fell on him, she barely recognized him, until he pulled off his cap. She smiled. My customer, you don come again. When you go chop today?" Duru's face was stern. "I'm not here to eat. I need to talk to you. Privately." The woman narrowed her eyes, hissed under her breath, and told one of the girls to serve customers. Then she led him into a small, dark corner of the shop, where sacks of rice and cartons of Maggie were stacked. "Oh yeah, talk fast," she said, folding her arms. "I no get time." Duru pulled out his phone and opened the gallery. One by one, he showed her the pictures he had taken, the rotten tomatoes, the gutter water, the pot of old stew. Her face hardened as she scrolled through, but she didn't look surprised. Instead, she let out a dry laugh that sent chills down Duru's spine. "Nah, this one day worry you? Listen, my brother, Lagos no be London. If I buy fresh tomato every day, who go pay? Customers like you want to eat for 500 Nigerian nairas, but you want 'em to taste like Sheraton Hotel. You think food business easy? This not survival. Everybody day do am." Her words struck him like thunder. He had expected excuses, maybe denial, but not this level of boldness. "You almost killed me," he burst out. "Do you even understand that I was in the hospital fighting for my life because of your food?" Madam only shrugged and adjusted her blouse. "If you no fit eat here, then don't come again. Nobody force you. There's hunger in town, and people must eat. Go report me if you like. This now Lagos. Who go even listen to you?" As if fate itself was listening, at that very moment a loud cry came from the front of the shop. A middle-aged man in a brown shirt suddenly slumped onto the bench, clutching his stomach and sweating profusely. Plates scattered as people screamed and rushed to help. Some poured water on his face. Others shouted, "Carry him out! Carry him out!" Chaos filled the restaurant. Duru's chest tightened. This was no coincidence. Another victim was right in front of his eyes. He turned back to Madam, whose face remained stubborn and unbothered. "You see," Duru pointed, "this is exactly what I'm talking about. How many people must collapse before you change?" She hissed, "Now, ordinary running stomach. He go day all right." Then she lowered her voice, leaned close to him, and whispered with a sly smile, "My brother, better calm down. No carry trouble way no concern you. See, I fit day give you free food every week. You no need to pay again. Just delete those pictures and everything go fine." Duru stared at her in disbelief. This was beyond wickedness. She was a devil in an apron and wrapper, trying to buy his silence with free plates of poison. He knew this was no longer about himself. It was about every unsuspecting soul that walked into that restaurant. And in that moment, he made his choice. He was going to escalate it. The very next morning, Duru woke before dawn, Madam's mocking laughter replaying in his mind, the way she dismissed his pain, the way she ignored the man who collapsed in her shop, the way she thought free food could buy his silence. Each memory tightened his chest. He knew that silence would only mean more people suffering, maybe even dying, and his conscience would never forgive him. So, instead of going to the bank that morning, Duru went straight to the local health authority office, armed with the photos on his phone and a clear report of everything he had witnessed. He laid out his case. At first, the officers were sluggish, asking him to simply write a statement. But when he showed them the pictures, rotten tomatoes floating in dirty water, their eyes widened. One officer exclaimed, "This is serious." Another quickly pulled out a file. They asked him to wait, and within an hour, 2 vans filled with inspectors and policemen were ready to move. Duru followed them, his heart pounding. He wanted to see justice with his own eyes. By midday, they arrived at the restaurant. As usual, the place was full. Customers devouring plates of rice and beans, chatting loudly, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Madam was at the counter, barking orders. Bring more stew. Add meat for him. But her voice froze when she saw the vans pull up and uniformed men step out. "Everybody stop eating. Drop your plates now," an inspector shouted. The room went silent. Confused customers looked around as policemen stormed the kitchen, tearing open basins and curtains. What they uncovered made people cover their mouths in horror. Baskets of half-rotten tomatoes, slimy with decay, a dirty drum of foul water used for washing, pots of stew crawling with flies and reeking of rot, and vegetables from 3 days ago already spoiled. Some customers gagged, throwing down their spoons. A woman with a baby burst into tears. "Jesus, I just gave my baby this food." Others cursed Madam openly, calling her wicked and heartless. The inspectors quickly gathered evidence, took pictures, and sealed the restaurant. Madam was handcuffed, right there in front of everyone. She screamed, wriggling, insisting she was being set up, but her workers kept silent. Some even nodded in agreement with the inspectors. The thin boy Duru had overheard earlier finally spoke boldly. "We tell say he no good, but she no day here. She nearly killed customer the other day." Duru stood quietly at the side, watching it unfold. For once, the voices of the poor were being heard. He remembered the night he had rolled on the floor in pain, fighting for his life, and tears filled his eyes. He believed he had survived for a reason, so that others would not suffer the same fate. News of the raid spread like wildfire. By evening, social media was buzzing with headlines. Popular Legos restaurant shut down for selling rotten food, and a War tomato scandal exposed by brave banker. Some even shared Duru's pictures without his name, calling him the Good Samaritan who saved lives. But Legos had a way of reminding people that evil never dies easily. Just a few weeks later, word reached Duru that Madam had been released after pulling strings and paying bribes. Rumors said she had already opened another restaurant under a new name in another part of the city. When Duru heard this, his heart grew heavy, but he did not despair. Instead, he turned his pain into purpose. He began speaking in churches, offices, and schools about food safety, often showing people a scar from his surgery as living proof. He would tell them, "Don't let hunger push you into the hands of wicked people. Protect your stomach, because cheap food can be the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. Your life is too precious to gamble with a plate of poison." Thank you for watching this story. Kindly share your thoughts in the comments. What lessons did you learn? Share this story with your loved ones. Get a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more inspiring stories. Remain blessed.